Hi friends, Pastor Terry here. We are Okotoks Alliance Church and this is the 10-Minute Coach. Let me take you into John chapter 4. It's this wonderful account of Jesus encountering this woman from Samaria. And the context is really significant. Just in the previous chapter, Jesus met with Nicodemus. We discussed the fact that he was this elite white male. Okay, he's not that. He's an elite Mediterranean male, privileged of his day, and wealthy, powerful. And Jesus encountered him, and we've talked about what unfolds as a result of that. You're a teacher of Israel, and you don't know these things. And there's this reference to the wind blowing like spirit. It's not insignificant. We get to chapter 4, and we have this reference to water, another metaphor for the work of the Spirit. And we're going to encounter this unpacked further in the Gospel of John as we continue our journey through John's Gospel. But in contrast to Nicodemus, who's this wealthy, powerful person, wealthy, powerful male, we have this woman from Samaria who is she's certainly not that. I think it's arguably correct that she is on the other end of the spectrum. So all kinds of speculation that goes on around who this woman is. John Caldwell preached this passage on Sunday and unpacked some of the options of this. She's normally been vilified as immoral. That really is an unfair assumption. It could be that she was abused through her life, and that's why she's had 5 husbands and the one she's with now. It is notable that she's had 5 men who in some way, shape, or form have disappointed her in life, in marriage, and now she's standing in front of a 7th man. That number 7 is not insignificant in the pages of Scripture, and it points to Jesus as the one who completes us, who fulfills us. And so there's all kinds of little sort of threads of ideas that are present in these narratives as we find our way along. And of course we get to the place where this extraordinary statement where Jesus, she says, hey, we're waiting for the Messiah, and he says, I, the one speaking to you, this is verse 26, I am he. We're going to run into that Greek configuration again, ego, eimi, I am. And it's an allusion back to the I am that I am in Exodus chapter 3 when God reveals who he is to the nation of Israel. This is not the first time that we are going to be benefited. We're going to be grateful that we paid attention in Sunday school. We're going to be grateful that we know our Old Testament is really my point here. Those accounts are the accounts that John is writing about draw their depth out of the Old Testament scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, and this is going to be one, the ego of me, I am he, the reference to Exodus 3, the I am that I am, this declaration of God. How did this gospel begin? Right? It began, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And we're introduced to the idea that Logos is actually God with skin on. It's this extraordinary kind of bringing a contemporary idea from the people of Ephesus, bringing it together with these deep biblical Hebrew roots, and we continue on. The disciples come back; they're amazed. Let me let you read that, and you can benefit from John's great message on Sunday. But I've invited you to go a little bit deeper here than what we would have time in a sermon to do, and to look at some of the backstories of some of these people. And I invite you to consider the backstory of the woman. I've made a couple of suggestions. John made a couple of suggestions. Perhaps you have some others. What's the backstory of that woman? I've given you a 4th question here, which is, what's the backstory of this well? This region, so John chapter 4, verse 5, so he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob gave to his son Joseph. What's the backstory? That's worth looking up there. I've given you the text. You can go to Genesis 33:19, read through Genesis 34. It's this horrific story that takes place where Jacob's sons take revenge because their sister Dinah was raped by the locals in this region. This is a pretty sad, sketchy, gory backstory that's attached to this. Genesis 34, Genesis 48, 11, Joshua 24:32. we don't want to read too much into the backstory, because neither John nor Jesus says this is because of what took place in Jacob's day. But there's also some benefit in paying attention to, well, where does this place show up elsewhere in the pages of Scripture, and may there be some kind of allusion to it. Well, just hold that very tentatively. Don't make too much of it, but go to the next question. What's the backstory of water and living water? And I've given you some texts there, Genesis 24, Genesis 29, Exodus 2. And we say, well, what's about this idea of water? How is this language used through the pages of Scripture? And how might it just add a bit of color to how I understand what Jesus is doing here in the context of the Gospel of John? He met with Nicodemus. He's meeting with this Samaritan woman. A whole bunch of people in Samaria get saved. Now, hang on a minute here. I thought we were in a Hebrew story. What are we doing with a bunch of Samaritans present? Again, this is not going to be the last time that John introduces us to the fact that Jesus has come. And yes, he has come to his people, the Jewish people, but he has come in fulfillment to the Jewish prophecies in the Old Testament scriptures. He's going to have harsh words for the Jews who reject him and say, Moses actually condemns you. We'll look at that next Sunday. He is going to, there's a significant comeuppance here. The Hebrew people, the Jewish people, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were supposed to prepare the way for the Messiah to come, and he would be a Messiah to all people. There will be a significant conversation in the early church. We read about it in the book of Acts, where they say, do people have to become Jewish in order to follow the Jewish Messiah? And they come to the conclusion, no, they should not. It shouldn't have been too difficult for them to come to that conclusion, because Jesus has been going straight to people who are not Jewish people, and he's not inviting them to become Jewish. He's inviting them to follow him, because he is Yeshua HaMashiach. He is Jesus, the Messiah. And this invitation is an invitation that's going to be extended to us as well. We're getting a spectrum of people that are being invited to Jesus: the wealthy and influential, the insignificant, forgotten, impoverished, hurt, wounded. We're all being invited to Jesus. And people, she's going to go back to the town and say, come and see the man who told me about my life. I take that to mean he made sense of my life. He brought healing to me with his words and made sense of my life. Is it possible that my entire life has been leading me to this point in time when I would encounter Jesus and he would bring life-giving truth to me and I would begin to change? I take that that's part of what's going on. People came, they respond. This town in Samaria, that despised by the Jewish people in the day, becomes the first major center to respond positively to Jesus, as far as we can tell in the narrative that John is providing for us. We say, man, this is crazy. This is crazy stuff that's going on in response to Jesus. And right in the middle of the text, we get this ego, me, this declaration of who Jesus is, and they become those. Before anyone in Jerusalem, before anyone in Capernaum, or even Cana, where the first sign took place, before any of this took place, these Samaritans are the ones who come to recognize Jesus as the Messiah, and they begin to follow him. They begin to change. There's this extraordinary move of God, and John brings us to this idea in verse 34 and following, that in verse 35 Jesus says, it's still 4 months until the harvest, but I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields, they are ripe for the harvest. It does call us back to what is the witness of my life. What's the testimony that I am telling? What are the seeds that I'm sowing? Where are the places that the gospel around me and my family, in my friend group, at work, on my street, in the club that I may be involved with, am I sprinkling seed, gospel seed, in any way? And may it be beginning to take root? Am I praying about that? We start with prayer, we share a cup, share a meal, share our friends. This is something we've talked about over the past decade. We We start with prayer, praying for those that need Jesus. We share a cup, share a meal, share our friends, and invite people to come and follow Jesus. Come and see the one who knows all about me and makes sense of my life. I'm Pastor Terry Lee. We are Okotoks Alliance Church, and this is the 10-Minute Coach. Bless you, and bye for now.